Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Roberta Ridley, Chairwoman of the African American Genealogical Society of Fort Wayne. And I am so happy to be here on this brisk December afternoon to have a program that I'm quite sure all of us will benefit from. Today, we are providing for you the Research Tools and Tips workshop, Navigating Ancestry Using DNA, presented to you by our very own historian from the African American Genealogical Society, Mr. Adrian Wells. I think that you will want to have your notebooks out. You certainly want to have pen or a pencil in hand. And if you have access to internet, so that you can move along with him with the information that he provides for you, so that you can have solid questions in the end. I won't drag it out because there's a lot to cover. I again present to you for today's programming, Mr. Adrian Wells. Thank you very much for joining us.
So today we're going to be talking about navigating ancestry using DNA as a genealogical research tool. And the first thing before you start, so we're going to talk. So we're just going to do an overview of ancestry, and then we're going to talk about the search using DNA. So the first thing when you're doing genealogy, the first step is in genealogy is gathering information. And you can gather this information using your 5-generation pedigree chart, family group sheet, and then a timeline is another thing that you utilize when you're gathering information. Then your second step in genealogy is finding evidence. And you can find evidence in family Bibles, obituary, census records, military records, vital records, and marriage records. And then the third step in genealogy is analyzing the information. So what is the information telling me? These are questions you want to ask yourself. Does it line up with oral history for what I know? And so this is just an example of a 5-generation pedigree chart. And this is something that I say that everyone who wants to start genealogy should start with this first, because it allows you to start with yourself and your parents, your grandparents, great-grandparents, and so forth. And you're able to put information on here to see what you have and what you don't know, and it can be the basis to start your search. And then once you do that, then you can you can start your search. You can go to Ancestry.com and start your search. But a lot of people, we're just going to talk about the different features on Ancestry. And we're looking at the home page on Ancestry. And on here, you'll see the tree tab. And so this tree tab is where you're going to find family trees you have created. And then this is also where you create and manage family trees. And in this, here you can also invite others to view your tree and invite others to collaborate. And then this is just on Ancestry, this is just my family tree, my pedigree chart. So that's what you start. So it just lets you see what you know. So this is an example of mine. And then what you want to do, and a lot of people don't do this, you want to build your tree out. And most people, when they start building their family tree, they just focus on their direct lines. But what you want to do is you want to build out your collateral lines also. And so a collateral relative is any blood relative who is not your direct line. So this means your cousins, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, siblings, etc. Building these lines out can provide clues in your research, and it will also help you in regards to your DNA. And so, like I said, a lot of people don't build out the collateral lines, but this is something that you need to do because, like I said, it's going to provide you with clues in your research, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then you have the search tab. This is where you want to search the Ancestry database. And you can search it by all collections, census and voter lists, the birth and marriage and death, immigration and travel, public member trees, and military. Then you can also search the card catalog in member search. And card catalog is something that everyone should familiarize themselves with, because it's going to be a beneficial tool when you're researching. But it just allows you to go in here and you can search for different collections. Like if I was looking for a death certificate in Indiana, I can go to the card catalog and I can just enter in Indiana death certificates, and it's going to pull all the databases that have, you know, Indiana in it. And the first one you see it will be the Indiana US death certificates. So that's just utilize this card catalog to search for the different collections, whatever state or wherever you're searching. And then you have the DNA tab. So the DNA tab is all things DNA. Here you're going to find your DNA results summary, your DNA story, your DNA matches. You're going to find through lines, traits. And then you have the DNA surveys, and this is where you can activate a kit or you can buy another test. So here you just see on the DNA tab, this is your DNA, my DNA results summary. So here you see you have your DNA story, which is your ethnicity estimate. And then you have your DNA matches, and then you have through lines. So this is what it looks like under the DNA results summary. And this is all things DNA. So if I would hit on view my DNA matches, it will take me to my DNA matches. Or if I hit on discover your DNA story, it take me to my ethnicity results. And then you have the help tab. And this is where you can find the support center if you need to contact Ancestry Support Center, or it has the community tab. And you also have the message board, or you can hire an expert. And the message board is another feature a lot of people don't utilize, but I've utilized it. It's been beneficial in my research. And so basically here, when you tap on it, this is what it looks like. You can search the message board. You can search by different categories, or you can search by a keyword, whether it be a surname or whatnot. And then there's other websites that also do certain stuff like the Ancestry message board. And I've used genealogy.com. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but that's one of the, but here we're going to see the Ancestry message board, I'm sorry. And so this is a message board post about John Donatus Mudd and Francis Lucas Mudd and Eleanor Mudd, that a cousin of mine, she had put a query in there, and I basically was on there looking too, and I commented on it and gave some information. But this is another way to find information and connect with others who are researching the people that you're researching. But then, like I said, there's other sites where you could do like the message board. So I use genealogy.com. And this is where I had a great hit, because I was on there posting, I was looking for information about the Mudd slaves. And so I just happened to go on here one day, and I found this guy who was looking for information about Charlie Mudd, who was a Civil War veteran from Kentucky. And so I seen that, and so I messaged him. I said, well, Charles is my third great uncle. And so we got to conversing back and forth, and he asked me if I have any information about him or any pictures or family stories. I said, no, I don't have any pictures of him, but I do have his pension file. And so he, you know, explained to me what he was doing, because he was working on a book called The African American Faces of the Civil War. And when I told him I didn't have any pictures, he said, oh, you don't have a picture? He's like, well, I have a picture of Charles. And he sent me that picture. If I had never been on this message board, I would never have got that picture. So the message boards are something that could be beneficial to you if you use them. And then on Ancestry, you have the extra. This is just going to be where you have information about the iOS and the Android app. So you can order photo books and posters, or you can hire a project genealogist, and they also have the Ancestry Academy, or this is where you could buy a gift membership for someone. It has the Ancestry Lab and Heritage Travel. And then the Ancestry Academy is a place where you can go. They have videos on here about the different search methods and record sets and things of that nature. So you can go on here and watch these videos and learn some things in the Ancestry Academy. And then you have the bell on there on the Ancestry page. It's just where you're going to receive it's a notification tab. So it provides notifications about people in your family tree. So here's if Annie Lou Coney is missing details about her birth, view birth hint. So you can go view the hint. So it just tells you different stuff about different people in your tree. And then you have the hints tab. Here you will get hints on those listed in your tree. But you have to be careful with these hints. You want to verify the information because people just run with hints and they be putting people in a tree that shouldn't be there, and it causes a lot of chaos. So you want to be careful with those hints, but they can be helpful because we'll talk about that later. And then you have the message tab. This is where you correspond with other ancestry users or your DNA matches or whatnot. And then now we're going to talk about the search. So like I said, with any search, you starts with a research question. So basically that is just what are you trying to find out? And so you just want to establish a research question. And so like I said, it's just a basis of what you're trying to find out and forms the basis for your research. So example, who was Betty Jones' mother, or when did Uncle George die? Those are just some examples of a research question. And so once you establish a research question, then you will try to answer it. And so I call this the information gathering. And so my research question is pertaining to DNA. So who they be, how are we related? Because when I got my DNA results, I had these DNA matches that were hot matches, and I had no clue as to who they were. But I since have found out that the reason why I know who they were is because I found out that my dad is not actually my biological father, so they're related on my biological paternal side. So here it is. I want to know what is the connection to these DNA matches. So you see these 4 DNA matches, and the first one shares 252 centimorgans, the second one 141 centimorgans, the third 131, and the fourth 131 centimorgans. These were considerably high DNA matches, so I'm trying to figure out who these people are, and they all had a common surname, which was Sneed. So I was like, well, who are these Sneeds? Because I've been doing research for a long time, and I had no clue as to who they were. But like I said, I found out that my dad's not my biological dad, so these were on my biological paternal side. So like I said, when I first received my DNA results, the T. Reach was my highest match. That was not from my maternal line. She had the surname Sneed in her tree, which several other DNA matches also had in their trees. So I'm looking at Marion Sneed. So I'm like, who is this person, and what is my connection to the Sneed surname? So who is Marion Sneed? So again, when you're dealing with your DNA matches, some of them have trees and some of them don't, or some of them have trees where there's only like 3 or 4 people in there. So when you're dealing with DNA, sometimes you're going to have to build out these trees to try to figure out what's your connection to these people. So that is what I did. I started doing a search for Marion Sneed. And that's when, so you want to build out the trees. And so that's when I found obituary for Marion Hathaway, her married name, but her maiden name is Sneed. So in this obituary, it listed her mother as Claire May Sneed and her father as Willie Clem Ellis. And then it had who she was preceded in death by, and then it had who she was survived by. And so she was survived by these 3 brothers. And the thing that came to my head, they lived in Fort Wayne. So I'm like, okay, so now we have Claire May, which is a Sneed. So I'm like, well, what is the connection to Claire May? So then, since then, I've got a couple more DNA matches. And so here I have A.H., which is A. Hathaway. He's the son of Marianne Sneed Hathaway. And so he shared 360 centimorgans. So I'm like, it's getting higher up there. So my question is what is the connection to Claire May in the Sneed surname? And then I got another DNA match, which was in the first and second cousin range, shared at 1,235. Centimorgans, and again, Clara May White Sneed shows up in history. So I go to Ancestry and I do a search for Clara May Sneed, and I only enter her first name and her surname, and I search all collections. So when you're searching, you want to make the less information I say is better, because I feel that you'll get a better hit as far as records with the less information, as far as when I'm researching. So I go to my all results, and then so here I find the U.S. Social Security Application Index from 1936 to 2007. So I click on that to see what it brings up. So here you see it says Clara May Sneed, and it lists her parents as Wren White and Sally House. But the thing, when you click on the records, you're going to get suggested records that also contains that person's name. So I see that there's a 1940 census there. They say that has a Clara May in that record. So I click on that 1940. And and I remember from A. Hathaway's treaty, he has a Clara May parents as Wren White and Sally House. And so here we have this 1940 census from the application. So here we have a Clara Sneed with children William, Ara Jr., Raleigh Lee, and Curtis. And here she's listed with a husband, Ara Sneed. So now my question is, who is Ara? Because this is where the Sneed name is coming from. We know now. So I continue on searching for Clara May. And then since then, actually, I need to go back because I want to go back, because another thing a lot of people don't do is they don't search for the people that's around their relatives in the census. So here you see that you have the household of Clara May, but the next household above that is for Wren White and Sally with a daughter Magnolia. And we know that Wren and Sally is Clara May's parents. And I had another situation on my birth certificate father's side when I was researching him, that I wanted to figure out who my two times great grandmother, what her maiden name was. And her maiden name was there all that time in my face, because her father was like the two households above her. So I had to research those people on that census. I would have known that before I knew it. But then I found her son's death record and listed his mother as Penny Jemison. And that's how I found what her maiden name was. But I had it all that time because her father was the two households above her. So that's another thing you want to do when you're researching, is research those people around. They call it the family club, friends, associates, family, friends. And then so since the 1950 census came out, I had that, so I just included that. But when I first was searching, I didn't have it. But here you have Clara May, and she's listed as being widowed, and with her children. So she has you see her son Raleigh, and then you see her son Fanny. And Fanny's daughter is a DNA match to me on my heritage. So on my heritage, so here is she on my heritage. And she's listed as a first cousin once removed, a second cousin, and we share 361 or 62 centimorgans of DNA. So when you DNA test, you want to test with the various sites, or if you have tested with other DNA companies, you can upload your DNA to my heritage and get matches that way. So you want to put your DNA out into different pools. And then so I continued my search with Clara May, and I really didn't find anything on Ancestry. So I turned my my search over to familysearch.org, and that's where I found a marriage record for Clara May White and Marion Sneed, dated the 14th of September, 1937. So I found a marriage record for them, and so I knew that her maiden name was White, and she married Marion Sneed. And another thing you want to do too is when you're looking at these different records, you want to notate the other people that's in this record. So here you're going to see a R.H. Smotherman, who is the surety, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. And then so I started searching for Marion, and that's when Sneed and I found his World War II draft record. And again, it lists his the name of the person who will always know that person's address, which was Claire May Sneed, is White. And then again, my focus is still on Marion Sneed, and that's when I found his death certificate. He died on February 21st, 1944 in Rutherford County. And so it lists his parents as Johnny Sneed and Lily Sneed. And the informant was Sally White, and we know from the research before, Sally White is his mother-in-law. So in the search for Marion, I searched for Marion in the 1920 census, the 1930 census, and the search yielded nothing. And then I searched for Johnny and Lily together, it yielded nothing, but I did find a marriage record for John Sneed and Lily Matthews, or Mathis, on Family Search. And I found John and Johnny Sneeds, who descend from a Rufus Sneed, and the Rufus Sneed shows up in DNA matches trees. So again, I said, did a search for Marion Sneed, and this time I just searched by all census and voter lists, and it didn't turn up anything but two census, which one was the 1940 census, which we've seen. So I was like, I know he was in Rutherford County, so where is Marion? So where is he? So then again, I go back to my DNA matches, but like I said, those first 4 DNA matches. So this one, M. Shane, we share 131 centimorgans. So I see that he has a Sarah Shane Sneed in his tree. So again, I need to build her tree out, because I need to know who her parents are. So I go and build his tree out. And so I searched for Sarah Shane Sneed Shane. And that's when I found her death certificate, and it lists her. And it lists her parents as as a John Sneed. So then I'm like, okay, so on Marion's death record, and then his father was John Sneed. Or is there some connection to this John Sneed? Or what? So now I know who she's descended from. So then again, like I said, I searched for John and Lily on Ancestry and yielded nothing. So again, I had to go over to Family Search, and that's when I did find a marriage record for John Sneed and a Lily Matthews. And like I said, again, you want to look at the different people that's in these records. And then there was a Will Matthews listed as a witness on this record. So then my question is, who is Will Matthews? So I continue on searching for Lily, and that's when I find a marriage record of Lily Matthews, who marries a Jesse Dillon or Dillard on the 21st of July, 1923. And so I continue my search for Lily. So now I've turned to Lily Dillard. So I go back to Ancestry, and I search for her over there. And that's when I find a death certificate of a Lily Dillard with a date of death of the 22nd of March, 1926. And on these death records, it lists the parents. So here, her father is listed as Will Matthews and Matthew. And then you see the informant is Jesse Dillard, her husband. So now I know who Will Matthew is. It's her father. So that's why I said you want to research the different people in these documents, because it's going to help you in your your genealogical journey. So then I turned my focus on Will because I wanted to know a little bit more about him. And then that's when I did a search and I found Willie Matthews in the 1870 census in Rutherford County, Tennessee. In this household of Park, Allie, John, Kate, George, in this household. So I was like, well, is this this Will? And so I continued searching for Will to see, you know, what records I could find. So again, when you go to the search page, you'll get a list of all the people that's in that particular census, and you can click on each individual person, and most of the time it'll pop up suggested records. So here I use the suggested records and I go to the 1900 census for, it says a Willie Matthews. And another thing in genealogy you need to understand is that sometimes spelling doesn't count here, or sometimes with the census, the records are transcribed wrong. So I go to this 1900 census, and it's in Rutherford County, Tennessee. And here we see that Will is, so in this census it's saying that it's a Billy Matthews, or Matthews in this household is a wife of Lavinia. And then there's a Martha Beckton listed as a stepdaughter. And then there's a Lily Matthews listed as a stepdaughter. Then there's a son, George, and then a son, B. Jordan. So I was pretty sure that this was the household that I was looking for. But then the thing I had questions about was that Lily is listed as being a stepdaughter, which I know from further research that in DNA that Will is actually her father. So I'm thinking that Lavinia is the one who was given this information pertaining to this particular census, because she's listed as a stepdaughter. And I know that Lavinia is not Lily's mother. So again, we want to, when you're researching, you want to particularly pay attention to names and nicknames when you're searching. So you want to try different things. Like with William, in records, it could be different ways. You can have WM, you can have Willie, you can have Will, you can have Billy. Those are all variations of the name William. And just like Matthews, in my research, I found all these different variations of Matthews. You have Matthew, Matthews with the S, Matthews without the S, Matthew with just the T, with one T, and you got Mathers, Mathis. Like with John, you have Johnny with one N, you got Johnny with two N's, and you got Johnny with, you know, with the Y. With Charles, you have Charlie with IE, or Charlie with the EY. And then Sneed, in some records, it's SNEED or SNEAD. So basic spelling, you know, doesn't count. So on your DNA match list, you can do a surname search. So I knew now that I had a connection to the Matthews. I was like, well, let me go to my DNA matches to see if I have any DNA matches that have Matthews in their tree. So that's what I did. I went to the search feature in the DNA match list. You have different ways that you can search your DNA match. You can search them by match name or the surnames in the matches tree, or you can search by birth locations. So this particular time, I searched by the surname, which was Matthews, and it pulled up various DNA matches that had Matthews in their tree. And so this one particular DNA match had Matthews in his tree, and his tree was built out. So I go to the tree and I see that he descends from a John Matthews and a Kate Robertson, their son, John Matthews. And so I was like, wait a minute, where have I seen this John and this Kate at? And so it clicked in my mind. I go back to the 1870 census, and that's where I seen John and Kate. So here you find John and Kate here in this 1870 census. And then down below, you'll see a Johnny, which who is also my DNA match AS and M, who and MW, who they descend from. But with also with the 1870 census, people just assume relationships, and you can't assume relationships, because I have some people, when I'm doing my search, they have Park and Alley listed as John's parents, which if you look at the ages in the census, I don't think that John and Allie could be John's parents because they're close in age. So that's another thing you want to take into consideration looking at the 1870 census. But now we have John and Kate Matthews and their son, Johnny, who these other DNA matches descend from. So I continue my search for Will. And so now I come to the 1920 census in Rutherford County. So here we have William Matthews. So now Willie now is William, because he was Will, Willie, Billy, now he's William Matthews. And in the household is Vinia, which is short for Lavinia Matthews. And then there's a Jonas Matthews, a Robbie Lee Matthews, are their sons. And then you have an Alex Matthews listed as a grandson. Then you have a Marion Matthews listed at 6 years old as a grandson. And you have a James Matthews listed as 4 years old as a grandson. And when I sing this, I flipped the script because now Marion Sneed, remember I said I couldn't find him in the 1920-1930 census. The reason why I couldn't find Marion Sneed in these census, I was searching for Sneed, and he was not listed under Sneed, he was listed under Matthews because he was in his grandfather's household. So that's why it's important to research these other people to build out those collateral lines, because that's where you're going to find clues, or it's going to help you find clues into to break down some brick walls. And then I continue on with my search for Will and for Marion. But in the 1930s, Will Matthews is now enumerated in the county poorhouse, and he dies the 14th of May, 1930, about 3 weeks after the census was taken. So Will is now listed in the poorhouse census. But now Marion is listed in the household of his uncle, George Matthews, which would have been Lily's brother. And so in the household is Anna, Queenie, Catherine, then there's Vinia, which is George's mother. She's listed as being widowed. And then here you have Marion Matthews, 15, which it says grandson down there, but up at the top you can see it says nephew. And then Ernest Matthews is 12 years old, and the same thing, it says grandson, but he's actually George's nephew. And then again, I kind of flipped my wig because now I found Ernest in two of my DNA matches tree. They just descend from an Ernest Sneed. And I was wondering why I couldn't find him in the census neither, because he wasn't listed under Sneed, he was listed under Matthews. So here are the two DNA matches, which is D Sneed, which we share 252 centimorgans, and then the L Sneed, we share 131 centimorgans. And I know from research and building out their trees that they both descend from William Ernest Sneed, which in most records he goes by Ernest. But again, here we go with naming patterns. So William most likely was named after his grandfather, Will Matthews. And so here's D Sneed's tree. And another thing I said, a lot of your DNA matches, they're going to have private trees, or they're going to have no trees. So you're going to have to try to build out their trees. And so that's what I had to do with this match to try to figure out how we were connecting. I had to build a tree out. And this is the tree that I built out for her. And what I did is I just created a floating branch within my own tree and included her and built out her tree where I could get record hints. And so that's where I kind of mapped it out to try to figure out, the connection. And then L Sneed, he had a tree, so I knew that he was descending from Ernest Sneed and a Eugene Botcher. And then, so then I had another DNA match. We shared 50 centimorgans of DNA, and she had a John Sneed in her tree. So I was like, well, could this be my John? He was born in 1887. And then, so he was descending from Charles Sneed and Martha Thompson. So my first mistake was I thought, oh yeah, this is my John, because the age is, is right. So I put him in the tree as being Marion's father. But my son, for more research, I found out that this John is not the John I was looking for. So I do some more research. So I searched for Charles, Sneed, and that's when I found this 1870 census of the household of a Rufus. 40 years old, and there's a Rachel, 40 years old, and there's a John, 19 years old, and there's a Viola, that's 17 years old, and there's Charlie, 15, and there's Lizzie, 13, Sally, 11, Molly, 7, and 5, a Lou, 3, and a Hannah, 1. So I find a John here in this census. So I continue on with my search. So with these two particular persons in Rufus, in this household, I build them out to see what's going on. So here we have Rufus Sneed and Rachel House. And so their son, John Sneed. And doing research for Rufus's son, John, I see that he married a Josie Williams. And then Charlie married a Martha Thompson. But the thing was, if you look at here, John, who married Josie Williams, named his son John. And then you have Sarah Sneed, which was the DNA match we talked about earlier, and Shane descends from. And then you have a Charles Sneed. And then over on Charlie's side, you have, he named his son John, and then he named his son Charles after him. So these naming patterns, it could be easily, you can get people mixed up because both these brothers both have sons named John and Charles. And so this John over on Charlie's, who Miss Lena, the DNA descends from. So again, I go searching, doing a search for John Sneed on that 1870 census. And again, I told you it's gonna bring up these record suggestions. And so here I go down the line and I see something, the Indiana caught my mind because I live in Indiana. So the Indiana death certificate caught my mind. I was like, oh, so let me go check out to see what this is all about. And so I go to the death record. And so here we have John Sneed. He was born the 25th of December, 1888 in Tennessee. He died the 7th of August, 1927 in Indiana. His wife was a Beatrice Sneed. His occupation was barber. And then his parents were John Sneed and Josie Williams. So I'm like, so I do have, this is my right John. So I see that over here, he died by homicide, he was shot. So I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could find a newspaper article to see how he was killed. So I go do a newspaper search. New people sleep on newspapers. I used to sleep on newspapers, but now I found out that they could be vital in your research. So here I go, I find some newspaper articles about John Sneed. So here you see barber shot and killed. And it says woman held in city prison, liquor is found. So John Sneed, color barber, employed at a shop at 527 Indiana Avenue, was shot and killed by Emma Harding, color, 789.5 Indiana Avenue, late Sunday following an argument, according to Lieutenant O.D. Thomas, who was investigating the shooting. The woman told Thomas that Sneed attempted to stab her with an ice pick. She said Sneed and 2 other men had been at her home most of the day and had been drinking. 2 pints of liquor were found by police. The woman was taken to the city prison and charged with murder. And then again, over here you have the woman slave man doing an argument on Indiana Avenue. And so these both were found at newspaper.com. And please forgive me for not having the citation. And then so I go to another site called Chronicling America. So I went to see if I could find some articles over there. And I did find one over there. And so it says, shot Palomar alleges self-defense. So it says John Sneed killed by woman he lived with as common law wife. And she alleged common self-defense for shooting him. And so so I'm like common law wife, because according to his death certificate, he was listed as being married to Beatrice. So I was like, oh, there's a soap opera going, a soap opera mess going on. But it basically said that, saying the same stuff that the other articles stated, but at the end it says that his wife, Beatrice's wife, is Sneed's wife, Miss Beatrice Sneed of Louisville, and his sister came here and had the body shipped back to Smyrna, Tennessee. So again, don't sleep on these newspaper articles because it'll lead you to some more information. So still the question is John Sneed, son of John Sneed and Josie Williams, Marion Sneed's father? So again, if you listen to any of the other stuff the previous talks I've done, I use the cousin calculator. That's something I've used a lot in my research. So that's when I go back to my trusty cousin calculator. And I also use DNApainter.com, their shared Morgan project. And so here we're going to use M. Shane, which shared 131 centimorgans of DNA. And so I go and input him over at DNA Painter. So it says 49%, either half, second cousin once removed, and so forth. And then the second image over here is a possible DNA, what Ancestry said that the possible relationships could be. So then again, so I go over, use my cousin calculator, and I calculate it all in there. So at the top, you have John Sneed, which would be the common ancestor. Then you have Sarah Sneed, and you have James Shane, which is M. Shane's father. And then I go down the left side, which is John Sneed, which would be Sarah's brother, and Marion, if that was John's son. Then of course, unknown, which would be whoever my biological father is, and then me. So I cross over from my name over to M. Shane and come down to see what if this was a possible relationship, what our relationship would be. So it says that we would be second cousins once removed. And that's exact what DNA Painter said, it's 49% that a person sharing that much DNA would be a second cousin once removed. So I did confirm that this John was my John because using my cousin calculator and figuring out in the DNA, I was able to figure out that indeed that John was the John that I was looking for. So another thing, I just want to bring up another newspaper article that I found when I was doing my cluster research or my fan club research. So I found the death certificate for Jonas Matthews, which would have been Lily Matthews' brother. And so on his death record also, it said that he was murdered. So I thought, oh, let me go see if I can find an article about his murder. And that's what I did. It said victim of a cutting of France on Saturday dies from wounds. So as I was reading it, it said that Jonas Matthews, 19, the Negro who was carved up by John Frank Crockett, another Negro of about the same age on Meek Slide, late Saturday evening, died yesterday afternoon at the home of his father, Will Matthews, on the Manson Road, where he was taken immediately after the bloody fracas. And then it says, Jonas Matthews, the victim of this affray, is a son of William Matthews, who has for many years been a laborer on the farm of Mr. R.H. Smotherman. The boy had been raised on the farm, never had known any other home. Mr. Smotherman gives him a good name, stating that he had been steadily on the job and was a good worker. So I asked myself, where have I seen this name at before, this R.H. Smotherman? So I'm like, where have I seen this name? And so I remember where I've seen it was in the 1920 census of Will Matthews. If you look at the household before Will, you'll see a R.H. Smotherman. So again, we need to utilize that fan club, research those people that are around your people. And then also, I remember that on Marion and Claire May's marriage record, that R.H. Smotherman was a surety on their marriage record. And from my research, I know that R.H. and H.R. are the same person, because sometimes the initials are interchanged, but it's the same person. So I did discover that they were the same person. So I was able to learn a little bit more about the Matthews because of that newspaper article, knowing that they had been working for Mr. R.H. Smotherman, you know, on his farm. So again, utilize that fan club, and it will lead you to different other clues in your research. And so that's all I have for today. And so we open the floor for any questions.
So on behalf of individuals who are newbies to the genealogy research, there were some terms that were used that I'm quite sure that a lot of people are going, you know, what is he talking about? How do I find that? And how do I really know how to use it? And there may be more than this, but I didn't see any questions about any of it as I was glancing through the chat. A floating branch on family tree. To explain that to our listeners, for those that may not know.
Well, a floating branch is basically where you go into your family tree and you attach a person to your tree, but they're not attached to anyone. So basically what you would do is, like, if I would go to a person in my tree, and I would add like their like what I did with the Sneed DNA match, because I didn't know how it was connecting, but I know it was DNA connected. So what I did is I just went into my tree on one of my people in my tree, and so I just listed her as a daughter on the tree. So then in your tree, you can go up and you can edit relationships. So what I went and did is I just detached her from the parents, and it just made her stand alone. So that in fact created a floating branch.
Everything.
Adrian, can you explain cousin calculator?
A cousin calculator is just a form where it just allows you to try to figure out how people are related, because it starts with a common ancestor and then it works its way across and then down, and then you would come across, like saying it goes by a number. So your common ancestor, when I use it, start with 0. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it just continues on. And then the same way going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you have, will be 1 and 1 would be siblings. So 2 and 2 would be first cousins on the cousin calculator. So, well, you can find the cousin calculators. You can Google, cousin chart, cousin calculator on Google, and it'll pull up various different ones. Some you have where you can, it could be a PDF where you can fill it in, or you can just have one that you can just print out, which I printed one out that's blank and have it in a what do you call it? Sheet protector, and I use my dry erase marker, and I'm just able to go in there and input my information. And yeah.
So basically speaking, if they want to approach it as you suggested, which
Yes.
sounds like a super thing to do, is to Google for a cousin calculator blank chart and work from that format.
Yes. And I always keep my cousin calculator chart handy. Like I said, I have it, I printed it off and I have it in a sheet protector with a piece of cardboard behind it in my dry erase. So I want to figure out how, two people are related, or somebody said, well, how are we related? And so I'm going to my cousin calculator and say, okay, well, this is how we relate. Because
So
this is our common ancestor. This is who you descend from. This is who I descend from. And so this is how we're related.
Okay, nice. Does it come with instructions?
Yeah, some of them do, but it's, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, especially like the blank one, because you'll see that it says, it'll have like, they'll say common ancestor, then it'll have like sibling, niece, nephew, and it has those different, what do you call it, headings on or whatever. Yeah, okay.
So there's a question, what do you suggest when it's further back and there are no records? Sylvia is looking for her grandmother who was born in 1878. Her grandmother was born in 1878. She's searching for her grandfather.
So she was born in 1878,
Her grandmother was born in 1878.
and she said there's no record. Has she DNA tested? That's the question I would ask, because, you know, when DNA is good for trying to uncover brick walls, the DNA, like I said, I just showed you here that the brick walls that I had, like I didn't know who these, so DNA is a key way to break, because I broke down brick walls. You seemed to talk about it previous to this, we talked about breaking down brick walls. So DNA is a good tool to utilize for breaking down those brick walls. If you have a DNA tested, that would probably be something that you would want to look into doing.
Sylvia says she's looking for a man born about 1825.
1825. Again, has she DNA tested?
I would say, I want to comment on that, because 1878, it's a tennis game. You know, some areas have very good records and some areas don't. She's saying that she's not. She will stand up there. Okay, what I would say to you, Sylvia, is that there are quite a few records that don't exist on a local level, but maybe on a state level, and somehow or another, they might even be like, say, a delayed birth records, and oftentimes we forget about doing that, looking at delayed records in the area. At some point in time, in 1878, maybe, I don't know, by the time this woman passed away, I'm asking, do you have a death certificate for starters? And if you don't have a death certificate, you might want to start digging real deep for that, and perhaps suggestions that we can make to help you do that. But to say that there's no record of her birth is probably a stretch. And then again, depending on where she is. Adrian is giving you solid advice in terms of doing the DNA, because the DNA may kick out someone closer to your grandmother, if I'm understanding you correctly, 1878, that might give you a connection. And as far as the birth of the great-grandfather, born in 1825, again, I'm guessing from what you're saying that you don't have a name, and if you do, then you need to be searching outside of the box in terms of what information might be available, localities, other records that might be available in that way. Also, of course, if you find the grandmother, the child of this man, then the DNA matches may give you all the answers that you need.
Oh, and then another thing that you can utilize too is the Family Search Wiki. That'll give you a lot of information too, because you can go over there and, you know, and search by whatever locality that you're researching in. Like for Tennessee, that's why I got the Family Search Wiki, so it allowed me, told me, you know, what records are available, you know, in that area, what records weren't available, or, you know, where you could go to find different, you know, record sets and things of that nature. Yeah,
So,
very true.
sorry, another question. Can you explain again how you did a search in your DNA matches for those related to certain surnames?
So you said you want explain again how? Yeah. So basically, when you go to your DNA match list, after going across the top, you will see where you can search. Do a search. You can either search by your DNA match name, or you can search by the surnames that are in your DNA matches trees, or you can search by birth locations in your DNA matches tree. So you just, whatever surname that you're looking for, you just will input it in the search bar, and then hit search, and it's going to pull up all the DNA matches that has someone in their tree with that surname. And so you'll just have to go through the DNA matches and look at their trees to see what surname to find that surname and see who those people are in their trees.
Adrian, there was on the DNA stats after the number, the initial C and N, I think. I heard you refer to it, but I couldn't pick up what that means.
That's abbreviation for centimorgan. So that's just basically the amount, how they measure the amount of DNA that one is sharing.
Centimorgan.
Yeah, centimorgans.
Thank you.
There's another question. Have you ever heard of a document called Certificate of Ownership of an Infant in the state of New Jersey? It's for a woman born in 1956. Certificate of Ownership of an Infant, in the state of New Jersey.
Me personally, no.
What time period are we talking?
She said 1956. Or
Are you
And-
1856. Or
are you
did
sure she doesn't mean
1856?
1856?
Yeah, because I 1956.
Lorraine is asking, so ask.
Yeah, it's 1956.
Certificate of ownership.
Yeah, isn't that peculiar?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember.
Do you have a document or such?
Well, I have a living aunt who just moved into assisted living, and her daughter found this document, and my aunt doesn't recognize the person's name or doesn't remember it, but it definitely says 1956 in New Jersey.
Okay, what I'm asking very specifically, is there a document that reads certificate of ownership?
Yes, there's a document. And I haven't seen it. My cousins asked me about it because I'm the family historian, but she says it looks like an official document.
Does it pertain to adoption?
Yes.
Well, we don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out.
I've not heard of that. I mean, it might be something that would have been used for a specific transaction during bondage. I could see that being somewhat realistic. But, in 1956, unless that's something that was presented in 1956 that was gleaned from another time. Is this a person that was born in that proximity or what? No.
My cousin said she had researched the person's name and found out that she passed away recently. So I think
Repeat that last part, please. She passed away when?
they had researched the person's name and she passed away recently. So it is 1956. It is for someone who's a contemporary of my aunt, who is 88 now.
But I guess you may have hit us with some homework.
Yeah.
And I will own that. Something
Well, she just asked me about this yesterday, so I haven't looked into it myself yet. I was going to check the New Jersey State Archives and see if there are other documents of that nature, but they thought maybe it was an adoption or something, but it's just a guess. We're just guessing at this point.
The term ownership overwhelms me a little bit.
I know it's, and in this century, I agree with you. It said 1856. It might be more understandable, but it's 1956.
Well, being the person that won't take on the whole team, I would say if you're following up on that and you're going to contact the state of New Jersey to find out if they have a record category like that, please share it with us.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Hi, this is Al, and hi. And what I did, I immediately Googled certificate of ownership of a child. If you Google it, you'll find out what comes up is corporate ownership of a child. Yes, and then read that article and figure out what it is as far as that goes. So that term is correct, but you have to understand the time period and also the circumstances under which this is set up.
Say it again, please. What did they say?
Okay, let me if you Google it, it's corporate ownership of children. And it's an article by Stephen Kimball. And it is the question of who owns our kids. And again, if you go through it, I think you'll find out that it's an interesting context and it may give you some insights into what that document is that you're talking about.
And that's what teamwork does. Thank you, Al. One of the other things that I noted as we were listening, because of different comments that I hear from other people, Adrian and Guzzy brought up the first one, that was the explanation of the center organs in segments. The segments of connection.
So the segment is just how many DNA segments that you're sharing on a specific chromosome. So that's it. So it's, if it's saying 23, like your 131 centimeters across 23, segments. So that's just how many segments of DNA. It could be on various. It could be on one chromosome, or it could be on various chromosomes.
Let's see. And I'm hoping I'm hitting on some things that maybe I don't see here. DNA Painter.
DNA Painter.
Yes.
That's a site. DNA Painter is a site where you can go and they have a shared cinema in project where I use. And it was developed by Blaine Bettinger. And then it has also what are the odds? There's just different. You can paint your DNA segments on there to try to figure out where our common ancestry, and there's just a lot of different features. So if you've done DNA, it's one of the sites that you will want to utilize. But it's a lot of different features, but it's DNApainter.com.
Adrian, I haven't done my DNA yet. What's the procedure in going about getting your DNA?
So you haven't done your DNA, you want to do it. So basically the first step would to decide which testing company that you want to test with. Because there's various, you have Ancestry.com, you have 23andMe, you have Living DNA, you have MyHeritage, you have Family Tree DNA. So it's just basically what is the end goal where you're trying to find out or determine what type of test that you want to take, like Ancestry, 23andMe. Are the two tests that I've tested with. They're autosomal, which means it's going to give you both your paternal and your maternal DNA matches, sides of your family. So I always tell people, for me, it's best to start with Ancestry first, and then work your way out if you're looking for both sides of your family. It's going to give you those DNA matches from both sides. And then, of course, to order the test. Like right now, if you're thinking about DNA tests, they're on special, holiday specials that are discounted until the 31st. So they're regularly $99, but I think that they're on sale for $59. So if you're thinking about DNA tests, now would be the time to get you a test that is discounted. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions.
I am very sure that all of you received some benefit from today's presentation. If not, you certainly had your question pool stirred just ever so slightly, if not a lot. I thank you, Adrian Wells, for that very insightful presentation. I think we've all got a lot of homework to do, something to look up, one or two things, maybe a lot. And certainly to be able to look at your DNA results that you have. And for those that don't have them, you should get them. You should do your DNA requests. As he just indicated, Ancestry.com has a holiday special going on. Go online to access the source to do that, and do it right away, because they usually have a large influx of requests at this time. And so it's going to be give you a little bit more time to get the results faster if you do it right away. You have another comment, Adrian?
And so when you DNA test too, you never know who you may be related to. You might be related to someone, in the Zoom, or someone in the room. In the case of me and Roberta, we're not a DNA match, but Roberta is a DNA match to my mom, my niece, my uncle, my mom's first cousins. So we're related, yeah.
And so the family grows. And it's always a surprise. And in this case, a welcome surprise. And I would encourage you to follow up on today's presentation with any additional questions that you have to our Facebook page or our email.